Ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, thanks for tuning in. We have an excellent match lined up for your viewing pleasure this evening. 4 decks into the ring, and we will soon find out who will come out on top. Let's start out by showcasing our fighters this evening. In the arena tonight, we have Ryan piloting Godo, Bandit Warlord. His Helm of the Host combo is all in and fast, so you will have to watch out. Not to mention, he's the only person bringing a mono red deck to the table filled with blue, so he's already got his work cut out for him. Next, we have Dylan piloting Oona, Queen of the Fae. This infinite mill combo deck wins by generating infinite mana and milling out your opponent. 2 strong colors and a piece of the puzzle already in the command zone makes for explosive wins. After that, we have Dawn piloting Kess, Dissonant Mage. This Aetherflux Storm deck slings a lot of spells and uses the graveyard to get additional advantage. It's a mean deck that isn't afraid to get onto the stack. Finally, we have Mike piloting the 4-color pairing of Tymna the Weaver and Thrasios, Triton Hero. The Dramatic Scepter combo deck can dig and dig deep to find the answer they need, while stopping many of the other answers their opponents may have. Without further ado, let's commence this perfect purview of pixelated paper pounding. They Rochambeau to see who goes first, and Ryan starts us off. Ryan plays a mountain and then casts a jeweled amulet and passes the turn. Dylan plays an island, then casts a Mystic Remora. Mike is ready though, paying 2 life and countering his Mystic Remora with a mental misstep. Much dismayed, Dylan passes the turn. Dawn plays a Marsh Flats on his turn, and then cracks it to find a Watery Grave into play tap, passing it over. Mike plays a Windswept Heath and passes it. At the end of the turn, Ryan puts a counter on his jeweled amulet. Ryan plays a Sequestered Stash on his turn, taps 3, and then casts Magus of the Moon. Mike, not wanting that with a 4-color deck, responds by cracking the Windswept Heath, finding a tropical island. He casts a Brainstorm, trying to dig for an answer, and without finding it, lets the Magus resolve. With nothing else, Ryan passes the turn. Dylan plays a Snow-Covered Swamp on his turn, and then casts Brainstorm. He then casts a Mana Vault and passes it to Dawn. Dawn plays an island on his turn, taps 2, and casts Rakdos Signet. Then he passes. Mike plays a Bloodstained Mire on his turn, then casts a Grim Monolith, and also plays a Mox Opal and passes it over. Ryan casts Mind Stone on his turn, and not want to miss an opportunity, attacks Dylan for 2 with his Magus of the Moon. With nothing else, he passes it over. Dylan, digging for a land, casts a Preordain. Whiffing, unfortunately, he passes it over. Dawn plays an Arid Mesa on his turn and casts Demonic Tutor. Digs for a card, puts it into his hand, and passes it over. Mike draws a card for a turn, looks at his hand, thinks for a second, and then passes it over to Ryan. At the end of the turn, Ryan puts a counter on his Jeweled Amulet. Ryan plays a mountain for his turn, and then attacks Dawn for 2 with his Magus. On his second main phase, he casts Shattering Spree, replicated twice, targeting Dylan's Mana Vault, Dawn's Rakdos Signet, and Mike's Grim Monolith. They all look, sigh a little bit, and then let it resolve. With nothing else, he passes. Dylan casts a Personal Tutor looking for a Ponder, hoping to find something that allows him to dig into his deck a little further, and then passes the turn. Dawn casts a Mox Diamond on his turn, discarding a Badlands, and then casts Aetherflux Reservoir. The first part of his combo is on the table, and passes the turn. Mike draws a card, looks at his hand, thinks for a second, and once again does nothing, and passes the turn over. Ryan on his turn casts a Lion's Eye Diamond, and then he casts an Imperial Recruiter, fetching a Treasonous Ogre into his hand. Afterwards, he attacks Mike for 2 with his Magus and passes the turn. Dylan casts a Ponder on his turn, digging into his deck to try and find that land. Unfortunately, not finding what he wants, but he finds something decent and casts an Expedition map. With nothing else, he passes. Dawn casts a Candelabra of Tawnos on his turn, and then casts a Wind's Fall. Ryan sighs the biggest of all because he just fetched a Treasonous Ogre up and has to immediately discard it. Everyone then discards their hand, draws 6, and with nothing else, Dawn passes it. Mike on his turn casts a Sensei's Divining Top. He activates the Sensei's Divining Top, digging into the top of his deck, and then plays a Scalding Tarn, and passes the turn. Ryan plays an Expedition map of his own on his turn, and also casts a Mana Crypt. He sacrifices the map to find a Cavern of Souls, then plays a Cavern of Souls, then realizing his Magus of the Moon will not allow him to declare a creature type when he plays it, and unfortunately misses that, and there's nothing he can do about it. Other than that, he plays a Soulbright Flamekin, and not to let an opportunity pass, attacks Dylan for 3 with the Imperial Recruiter and the Magus of the Moon. After that, he passes. Dylan on his turn finally finds a land and then plays an island. He casts a Soul Ring and casts a Rhystic Study. He then casts a Sleight of Hand and then passes it to Dawn. Dawn, not wanting to miss out on all the fun of the Rhystic Study tax, plays a Swamp and casts a Rhystic Study of his own. Through hearty laughing of the table, he passes the turn. Mike plays a Drowned Catacomb on his turn, and then passes the turn over. Ryan flips for his Mana Crypt trigger on his upkeep and loses, taking 3 life. He plays a Mountain in his main phase. He then attempts to cast Godo, Bandit Warlord. Godo, Bandit Warlord resolves. Godo's trigger goes onto the stack, but Don has a response. He pays 4 life and then casts Dismember on Godo. Godo dies unfortunately, but the trigger lives on, and he fetches Hammer of Nazan and puts it onto the battlefield. The Hammer of Nazan trigger goes on the stack, and he attaches it to Magus of the Moon. A little bit embittered by what happened and letting emotion get in the better of him, he casts Mog's Salvage with its alternate cost targeting the Aether Flux Reservoir. And also, through a little bit of resentment and bitterness at losing his Godo, he attacks Don for 7. With nothing else, sighing deeply, he passes the turn. Dylan on his turn plays a snow-covered island. He then casts Emir Signet. He then transmute Muddle the Mixture for a pull from Tomorrow into his hand, and then passes the turn. Dawn on his turn plays a Scalding Tarn, and then casts Izzet Signet. Mike activates his Sensei's Divining Top in response, digging to the top 3, and lets it resolve. Afterwards, Dawn casts Chromatic Lantern, negating the Magus of the Moon on his board. With nothing else, he passes it over. Mike plays a Felwar Stone on his turn, and then he casts Carpet of Flowers. He moves to the second main phase and adds 3 mana through the Carpet of Flowers because he targets Dylan's 3 islands. He casts Bloom Tender on his turn, and Thrasios hits the board. With nothing else, he passes it over. Ryan on his turn plays a Mountain and then sinks 6 mana into the Soulbright Flamekin to generate 8 red mana. He then attempts to cast Godo, Bandit Warlord for the 2nd time. Dawn has an answer though, and he casts Counterspell. Not to be outdone, Ryan casts a Reverberate targeting Counterspell. Dawn has another answer in his hand and is ready for the backup and casts Pact of Negation. We sigh, think for a second, and Godo is countered yet again. With nothing else, he passes the turn over. At the end of the turn, Dylan casts a Mystical Tutor, fetching up a High Tide and puts it on top of his library. Dylan on his turn cracks the Expedition map for an island. He then plays High Tide and pays the Rhystic tax. He casts a Mox Opal, and then pays 6 to cast an Everflowing Chalice, kick 3 times. He then casts a Pull from Tomorrow for 5, and then a Mox Amber. With nothing else, he passes the turn. Dawn misses his Pact of Negation trigger on his upkeep and loses the game. Just kidding. He plays a Bloodstained Mire for his turn, and then casts Baral, Chief of Compliance. With nothing else, he passes the turn. Mike on his turn casts an Enlightened Tutor, fetches up a Paradox Engine, and puts it on top of his library. He activates the Sensei's Divining Top to draw a card, which is our Paradox Engine. He then plays a Savannah for turn. He goes to the second main phase and adds 4 mana through the Carpet of Flowers when he targets Dylan. He then casts a Paradox Engine. Dawn, knowing what that does and not wanting to let that hit the board, he responds with an Arcane Denial. Mike has a backup of his own though, and he casts Flusterstorm with a total storm count of 4. Dawn looks at his mana and thinks. He does not have the ability, and the Paradox Engine resolves. He activates Thrasios, revealing his Sensei's Divining Top. He casts his Sensei's Divining Top, untapping all of his non-land permanents. He spins his top, looking at the top 3. He then finds the card he wants, flips the top to draw that card, and puts his Sensei's Divining Top back on top of his library. He casts a Mystic Remora. Afterwards, he casts Tymna the Weaver. He activates Thrasios again, revealing Sensei's Top and putting it into his hand. He casts Sensei's Top, spins the top, activates Thrasios, scrying to the bottom and revealing a Spell Pierce. He spins the top again, flips the top, and then casts a Lotus Petal. He activates Thrasios and reveals top, puts into his hand. He casts the top again, flips the top again, and then casts Preordain. He casts the top again, spins the top again, flips the top again, and then he casts Ad Nauseam. Dylan, knowing what Ad Nauseam does to the game and pretty much signifying the end of it, casts Force of Will, paying a life and exiling a blue card from his hand. Mike, wanting his Ad Nauseam to go through, casts a Force of Will of his own. Dawn, knowing what's about to happen, casts a Dramatic Reversal. His Dramatic Reversal resolves, he untaps all of his non-land permanents, and Dawn surprises us all with an Ad Nauseam of his own. Mike, not having anything else to do, lets it resolve. Dawn reveals a Felwar Stone, a Vampiric Tutor, a Verdant Catacombs, a Vandal Blast, a Flusterstorm, an Exsanguinate, a Goblin Electromancer, an Island, and the card he was digging for, a Force of Will. Dawn casts a Force of Will, targeting Mike's Ad Nauseam, and the Ad Nauseam gets countered. He activates Thrasios, revealing Sensei's Top again. He casts the top, he spins the top, and he activates Thrasios, revealing Windswept Heath and putting it onto the battlefield. He casts Noble Hierarch. He activates Thrasios again, revealing Dramatic Reversal. He spins the top, and he activates Thrasios, revealing Imperial Seal. He casts the Imperial Seal, digging for a card and putting it on top of his library. He activates Thrasios, revealing what it was that he dug for with his Imperial Seal, which was an Isochron Scepter. He casts his Isochron Scepter, and everyone being tapped out and out of free counter spells let it resolve. When that resolves, he puts Dramatic Reversal under it, and ladies and gentlemen, Mike has the game. He has infinite mana, infinite storm, and infinite untapped triggers of all of his non-land permanents through his Dramatic Reversal combo. He digs through his deck with Thrasios, Triton Hero, and then finds the key tool to finish us all off, Aetherflux Reservoir. Ladies and gentlemen, what a match. Mike was on the back foot for most of the game due to Ryan's turn 2 Magus of the Moon. He did not let that stop him and instead stayed patient and waited for the perfect opportunity to strike. Mike with his Dramatic Scepter deck take this match, but don't think that everyone is ready to throw in the towel. Tune in next time when they duke it out again to see which deck comes out on top.